It's Cassidy and Hammy, the Board Game Blitzers. We're showing you our favorite games.
Kicking off this set of 10 with my number 70 is Quantum. Now, there are a lot of space games out there, like a lot. But this one is one that I feel like doesn't quite get enough love. So in Quantum, players are controlling ships that are flying around to different planets, but the ships are represented by dice. What's neat about this is the ships, the dice, the type of ship, and the speed of the ship are both determined by what die face is facing up. And you can change what die face is facing up pretty easily. So if you want a fast, weak ship, you would want a 6. If you want a really slow but strong ship, you'd want a 1. Each ship also has a special ability attached to it. So when you use your ship's special ability, sometimes that will manipulate the die or do other things. You're flying around to different planets attempting to build quantum cubes on each of them. And the other players are trying to do the same. So you'll go do battle with some of the other ships, or maybe try and avoid them. It's pretty cool, and the board is modular. There's a bunch of tiles that make it up, so you can do a different configuration each time you play. I really like this, especially because of the ways that you can mitigate dice rolls. So when you roll those ships, they're set, but you can change them pretty easily. So when people say they don't like dice games, especially space games with dice in them, this is one that I point to as a really good example of a space dice-based game that has some luck, but not as much as a lot of others. And that is why it is my number 70, Quantum. My number 69 is Escape Room, the game. So I'm counting all of the scenarios within this game system as a single entry on this list, although I haven't played all of the expansion scenarios. So in Escape Room, the game, it is, as you would imagine, an escape room in a box. But what's cool about this compared to other escape room game systems is this one is controlled by a mechanical box that has both the timer for the game and the places that you're going to be putting little plastic keys to unlock specific puzzles within each game scenario. So you don't use pen and paper, well, you do to solve puzzles, but not for like the solutions. And you don't use an app like you do in Unlock. But the keys are really cool. It gives you a nice tactile thing to do, and it kind of harkens to a real escape room a little more because you're having to actually put keys into different slots to try and solve puzzles. I really like this one quite a bit. I've heard that some people do have trouble with the box that the keys go into, and therefore it makes the puzzles unsolvable. I haven't experienced that in my playthroughs, but it might be something you'd want to be aware of. But if you like escape rooms or escape room games and you haven't tried Escape Room, the game, it's one I would highly recommend, and that's why it's my number 69. My number 68 is kind of another cheat. It is Dead of Winter and Dead of Winter the Long Night. Dead of Winter the Long Night is a standalone expansion for the original Dead of Winter. So you can buy either, but they're basically the same game. The Long Night just has some new areas and mechanisms included in it, but it's basically the same thing. So in Dead of Winter, players are controlling survivors in a zombie apocalypse. And I'll admit, zombies, not one of my favorite themes, but kind of like the TV show The Walking Dead, which admittedly I've cooled on, in Dead of Winter, it's more about the survivors than the zombies themselves. So it's a cooperative game, but there can potentially be a traitor in each game, so it's semi-cooperative in that way. And players are traveling to different locations, gaining resources, dealing with different crises, and trying to hold off the zombies long enough to fulfill both their team goal and their personal goals. What's neat about this is there's a traitor, but all of the players have a personal goal that they need to achieve by the end of the game if they want to win. So sometimes players might do actions that look a little suspicious, which could theoretically pin them as the traitor, but it might be something related to their secret goal. So it helps the traitor hide. There are some traitor games where it's kind of hard to play the traitor because you can't really hide as well, and this one helps mask the traitor a little bit. I will say this game is brutal. It's hard. The crossroads cards are one of the best aspects of this game. They pop up occasionally based on different scenarios that are going on or different characters that are in play, and they add some really nice thematic story elements to the game and give the players some interesting decisions to make. I will also say that one of my favorite components in any board game ever is in this game, and that is the exposure die. You'd think a single die wouldn't be that important, but I've noticed a lot of horror or scary board games don't really give you that much of a feel of fear or tension. But the exposure die, when you have to roll it, has a single side on it that will literally cause your character to just die. It's a little bite symbol, it's a little tooth, and when it rolls, your character's just dead. So the act of rolling that die really ramps up the tension, like a lot. So I think it's a really good inclusion, and it helps bring the theme to life even more. And apparently my dogs really like it too, so that is why it is my number 68, Dead of Winter and Dead of Winter the Long Night. My number 67 is a two-player abstract game called And Then We Held Hands. In this game, the two players are trying to navigate the different levels of a relationship. But they're doing that by playing cards that are either in front of themselves or their other player. What's cool about it is the players aren't allowed to talk to one another during the course of a round. So you might want to take a card from in front of your partner and play it, but if they don't know why you're taking it, or if they were planning on playing it, there might be some tension or some weird feelings there. And it's so neat because you're having to communicate non-verbally in a way, and you're having to trust your partner in ways that, you know, wouldn't be expected, I guess, in an abstract board game. As you play cards, you move your pawns around this board that has varying levels of circles that go inward, and you're trying to move in toward the center of the board. I love it. The first time I played it was this year in 2018, and it's actually a little bit of an older game now, a few years old, but I'd never played it, and I'm really happy I finally did. It's great, and I think you have to play it with the right person, like definitely somebody that you connect with already in some ways. So I love it. It's great, and that is why it's my number 67, And Then We Held Hands. My number 66 is New York Slice. So this is a re-implementation of an older game called Let Them Eat Cake, which was actually about pie, but it was called Let Them Eat Cake? Not sure. Regardless, in this new version of New York Slice, it's about pizza. So players are attempting to gain points by eating or collecting pizza slices of different types. Each round, an entire pizza will be laid out, and the slices are these big chunky cardboard wedges. And once the pizza's all divvied up, or put out I should say, then the active player has to choose how to split the pizza. They have to split it into the same number of sections as there are players in the game. But the catch is, they get whatever section is last. So everyone else gets to pick a section before the active player. So when you split it up, you don't want to leave one section, you know, with some really crummy slices, because then that's the one you're going to get stuck with. So it's the I split, you choose mechanism that has been popular in a couple of other games, but I think it's really done well here. And who doesn't love pizza? Come on, it's great. You get points for eating pepperonis, you get points for collecting slices of a specific type, you get negative points for eating anchovies. It's all fun and great, and I love it, and it's got a pretty high player count on it compared to some other games. I think it can go up to 6, just right within the box. So that is why it is my number 66, New York Slice. My number 65 is Beastie Bar, New Beasts in Town. Apparently Maybe decided to try and be a beast for this section because she doesn't want to get off of my lap. So in Beastie Bar, New Beasts in Town, players each have a deck of their own cards with different animals on them, and all of these animals are attempting to get into the hot nightclub Heaven's Gate, but they have to wait in line outside before they can get into the bar. Players will draw from their hand of cards to play animals into the line, and each animal has a special ability that will go off either every round or every turn or when it's played to the line. So some of the animals will jump ahead of other animals or eat other animals, or like the bat is afraid of being at the very front of the line because the light from the nightclub is too scary or whatever. Bats don't like light. I don't know what it would do when it got in the club. And my favorite one is the llama, who spits on the animal in front of her in the line every turn, and maybe is going crazy here. Apparently she really likes Beastie Bar. I don't know what's happening. Needless to say, every round, 2 animals get into the club and 1 animal gets kicked out of the line, and then you keep playing cards until everybody runs out. And it's fun. It's great. You get points based on how many animals you got into the bar, and there's a couple different ways to score the game. I really like it, and that is why it is my number 65. Beastie Bar, New Beasts in Town. My number 64 is a really simple card game that I love, and that is No Thanks. So in No Thanks, there's a deck of cards between 3 and 35. 9 of them get pulled out randomly at the beginning of the game, and then the rest of the game, a card gets flipped up, and every time it gets to a player, they have to decide whether they want to take that card or put one of their chips onto it and say, no thanks. Players are trying to get the lowest score possible by the end of the game, and the cards are all worth the amount of points listed on them. Chips that players have at the end of the game are negative points, which subtract from their score. So when a large value card like 30, 31 come up, you don't want to take that because that's a lot of points. But what's neat is the cards that are in sequential order that you collect by the end of the game, only the lowest value in the sequence will count for points. So if you do have to take that 30 card at one point, then later if the 31 pops up, you can actually take it and it won't be a bad thing for you because it'll go right underneath the 30. The chips collect on the cards, and when you take a card, you get all the chips that are on top of it as well. So sometimes it might be worth it to take a high point card if it has a lot of chips on it, because then it'll give you more leverage to not take cards in later rounds. I am horrible at this game. I always lose. Always. I don't know what it is, I just make the poorest decisions ever in this very simple game, but I still love it. It's a ton of fun. It's really easy to teach and play, and it plays quickly, so I really, really like it, and that is why it's my number 64. No thanks. My number 63 is Wits and Wagers, or more specifically, Wits and Wagers Vegas Edition. So in Wits and Wagers, it's a trivia game where you don't actually have to know any trivia, which is why I like it so much. Players are either playing as individuals or on teams, and a question is posited that has a numerical answer. But it's the type of answer that pretty much nobody would know. So it might be something like, how many different species of animals are there in the known world? And you have to write down your guess, as do all the other players, on little dry erase marker boards. Then all of the marker boards are collected and laid in order, lowest to highest, and all of the players have to then guess which answer that was written down they think is the closest to the correct answer without going over. So you don't have to have any knowledge, but you'll kind of want to know, like, oh, I think, you know, Shelly really knows animals a lot, so maybe she knows the answer, so maybe what she wrote down is the best one. Or basically, if everybody put numbers in the same range and there's a big gap between these two guesses, maybe you put it there because you think the odds are better. So you place your bets, and then you get paid out based on whether you were right or not, and different spots on the board will pay out different amounts. So the answer that's closest to the middle will usually pay out less, and answers that are on the outskirts will pay out more. In the Vegas edition, there's a couple additional things you can bet on. So you can place a blind bet before the answers are revealed on which team you think is going to have the correct answer, that the closest without going over. And there's also ways to bet on groups of answers. So if you're really not sure, then you have some ways to mitigate things. I really like it. This one is great with small groups, large groups, really large groups. You can play in teams, so technically you can have tables full of people all playing together on a team. And this one gets run at conventions a lot. I've helped the Dice Tower run a couple of different events at Dice Tower Con and at MeepleCon. It's always a blast. And you can make up your own questions if you want. I've actually done it as a team building exercise at work before, where I customized the questions to my coworkers' interests, and it was really fun. So that is why it is my number 63, Vegas Wits and Wagers. My number 62 is Specter Ops. So Specter Ops is a one versus many game where one player is taking on the role of a secret agent trying to infiltrate a Raxxon facility, and all of the other players are genetically modified Raxxon hunters trying to track down the agent and stop them. The agent is attempting to complete a number of different tasks within the facility and then get out. The hunters are trying to kill them before they can do that. The agent tracks their movement secretly on a piece of paper or eventually within an app, although I don't know when the app is going to be released, hopefully soon. So their location is not revealed to the other players unless specific conditions happen, where maybe they're in a monster's line of sight, or a monster uses one of their special abilities to find them. The agent has some special abilities that they can use to kind of hide their movement as well, but it's basically a cat and mouse game where the agent is just trying to stay hidden long enough to complete some tasks and get out before the hunters can come and get them. I really like this. It's my favorite of the big box secret movement one versus many games because it has a shorter playtime than some of the other popular ones like Fury of Dracula or Letters from Whitechapel. I really like it. I know that there is another standalone expansion coming for this, I think in 2018, but I'm not sure when, and I'll definitely want to try that out. But for now, my number 62 is Specter Ops. My number 61 is Legendary Encounters, a Firefly deck building game. So this one might be a little controversial. I know when this game was released, a lot of people had some negative things to say about it, but most of the negativity centered around the artwork. And I'll admit, the artwork is not great. It seems like they couldn't get the likenesses to the original characters, which that's all well and good, but the artwork was kind of drawn to sort of look like the original characters from the TV show, but in a really weird and distorted way. And the art isn't just bad, it's inconsistent and bad. So the same character drawn on different places looks wildly different. Like you wouldn't even know it was the same character if there wasn't a name on the card. So the artwork, no, not great. But the game, really, really fun. And I have to admit, some of the rules are a little shaky. Some of the scenarios are brutally hard. But if you're a fan of the Firefly TV show and you've ever wanted to experience like playing through the episodes of that show, this game does that, and it does it really, really well. Each episode of the show is its own deck of cards with different people and items that will come up that feel very much like the events of that episode. Even shuffled together randomly, it still feels like you're experiencing the events that took place in each episode. They have some cool mechanisms attached to the tasks you need to complete for specific episodes, and the bad guys are all the people you would expect to show up in every episode. It's honestly the best thematic Firefly experience you can get out of a board game. My friends and I played through a campaign of all of the episodes together, and we had so much fun with it. I will admit, campaign-wise, we house ruled a couple of things based on what was in the book because they had a setup for doing it as a campaign, but your characters kept damage from game to game, and it made it really, really hard to keep the characters alive. So we did house rule a couple things. So I've got caveats all over the place here, but honestly, I just loved playing this game so much, and I would love playing through the episodes again. So that is why it is my number 61, Legendary Encounters, a Firefly deck building game.